By the time you make it to the weekend, you're so weakened from working a job that does not feed your soul. New Paradigm Network. Thank you for joining us for our 23rd episode of Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality. Today, we are exploring the fascinating social evolution of the weekend and its implications on addiction. But before we dive into our main topic, allow us a moment to introduce ourselves. As always, I'm Jackie Lyons of Akashic Energy Healing.
And I'm Elizabeth Maria of Elizabeth Maria Unlimited. And together, we're the hosts of Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality, where we navigate the power of personal growth and self-discovery through exploration and acceptance of our shadow selves. Well, welcome guys to this week's podcast. So we're going to go into this is short little social history of the weekend. So while the Oxford English Dictionary traces the first use of the term the weekend to the British magazine Notes and Queries in 1879, we need to rewind the clock all the way back to the ancient times to understand really this idea of the weekend and the social evolution. So in many agricultural societies, the concept of rest days was pretty intertwined with religious observance. For example, the Jewish Sabbath and the Christians' day of rest on Sunday. So these provided a reprieve from labor and created a certain kind of rhythm of life, beyond the toil of working.
Fast forward to the Industrial Revolution and the rise of factories and the urbanization where workers face grueling hours. Some workers even working up to 6 and 7 days a week. But in the 19th century, through the emergence of the labor movement, advocating for shorter work days, and critically, the institution of a weekly day of rest. The labor struggles of the late 1800s and the early 1900s paved the way for significant changes in the law. For instance, the 8-hour workday movement gained traction, leading to laws mandating rest periods.
However, it wasn't until the early 20th century and this was really I really didn't know that it was a pretty modern invention, the idea of the weekend. But the modern weekend as we know it began to take shape. So in 1926, guys, Henry Ford shocked the business world by implementing a 5-day work week for his employees. And just as a side note, Ford's decision wasn't all that altruistic. It really was that he recognized that rested workers were more productive. So moving forward to the Great Depression and on through World War II, this further catalyzed the evolution of the weekend. So governments introduced different types of labor reforms and regulations to combat unemployment and also to boost morale for the workers, right? So in the United States, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed the Fair Labor Standards Act in 1938. And this established a 40-hour work week. And this was the time when they began to mandate overtime pay. So as Western culture shifted to embody the ideals of the middle class, kind of, the idea of the bourgeoisie, the weekend emerged as a symbol of leisure and recreation. It became a time for, families coming together, people pursuing, different cultural activities and outdoor stuff. And this also coincided with the rise of consumer culture, which fueled the new weekend economy. And so a lot of businesses during this period and, still today capitalize on people's newfound leisure time.
However, the weekend's evolution did not stop there. With the advent of technology and globalization, the boundaries between work and leisure have been blurred. The digital revolution enabled remote work, and this has allowed people to stay connected to their jobs even when they're supposed to have their time off. And I think we all live with a phone in our hands
Right.
now. So
Yes.
I know bosses at my job that are never off. Like you can get a hold of them all the time. So today, the weekend is really undergoing another transformation. And the pandemic was really another big one that many organizations were then forced to these remote works on a massive scale. So this did challenge traditional notions of the work week. And as we learned to navigate over COVID, this new landscapes, the questions started to arise about, what is that proper work-life balance? And that in my work has really shifted as well. And the open-mindedness of having that ability to take time off, especially during the week, to do things that you may need to only be able to do during Monday to Friday, 9 to 5.
Right.
So that more open-mindedness is really something I've seen and saw personally in my work.
Right, absolutely. I think that, definitely after the pandemic, that the whole concept of the work week has begun to really shift. I mean, even more so than, in the last well, I guess, what was that? Like in the 1940s was really when the idea of the weekend really, became solidified in our culture. And so what that's like, what I'm like not a mathematician, and I know like what is that? That's 67. So that's like 80 years. So that's
That's
less
not
than a
doesn't seem long.
right. It is not that long. And I know that I think that the European Union, or I think that they have been talking about trying to implement maybe a 4-day work week. And I think also New Zealand has looked into that as well. And so there's just there
I had a company that did a 4-day work week, but it was a 10-hour day. But it was
uh
nice. That extra day of the week, those
yes,
3 days, like the extra 2 hours didn't add too much to the day and it
yeah,
was really beneficial to get that other day. So I like the thought of having those flexible shifts. We
yes.
all have so much going on. Like nothing runs 9 to 5 anymore. So you can't just assume that everybody can fit into those boxes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like what you were saying, like doing things during the week. I mean, people have doctor's appointments or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do like how we are kind of, our culture is moving kind of in a fluid way toward, just towards like more, actually, I mean, really kind of opening up about what it looks like, and I guess also depending on what socioeconomic bracket you fall in as well. And we saw that even during the pandemic with the essential workers, and stuff like that. So but yeah, so moving on to weekends and addiction, and this is really getting into our main topic here, right? So we have this creation. Oh, and in some of my research, I found that the weekends, I mean, in Europe, I mean, it was just part of the weekend, ideas or whatever that people drank. And they actually, and I can't remember what the Monday was called, but there was like a certain name for the Mondays. And it was basically like a hangover day. And that the weekend used to be, it was like half of Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday, and then it kind of switched. So, and that's like the turn of the last century. But the weekends have always been associated with, honestly, with getting drunk, for workers to get drunk. So I mean, like that idea of like work hard, play hard is actually what the weekend was created for.
Mhm.
So weekends for people that are in recovery or that are on a recovery spiritual journey can be a minefield of different types of triggers, right? So these triggers can pull us back into unhealthy habits and behaviors. So this can be excessive screen time, right? Especially with binge watching now, overindulgence in food, drugs, or alcohol, workaholism, right? The weekend can present very unique challenges for those striving for mind, body, spirit balance. So, one huge trigger, it's the change in routine, right? So, just like I said, like work hard, play hard kind of thing, right? And so weekdays come with structured schedules. You got work, you got your appointments, you got your commitments, you got all this stuff. Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
And come Friday evening, I mean, you're ready to rock and roll, right? So sometimes this lack of structure, right, can leave us feeling adrift, making slipping back into old habits a lot easier.
Interesting. Yeah. And another major trigger is socializing. And it can be very enjoyable and rewarding to spend time with your families and friends. But that's not always the case. It can also be a breeding ground for negative behavior patterns. And whether this is peer pressure to drink or use substances simply because you're being surrounded by other triggers, then this can be unhealthy food, as well as Elizabeth said, screen time. Social gatherings just pose a significant challenge for us that who are currently going through recovery or have already gone through recovery. And we don't want to forget about the stress that can cause on these individuals as well, myself included, I would say. But weekends are historically meant to be a time off to unwind, but they really do bring their own set of challenges and stressors. And this can be from financial worries, relationships issues, or just simply the pressure to make the most of our time can also drive people to seek out unhealthy coping mechanisms. And that was a big one for me too, because sitting still was not okay. So when you're not at work and the kids were gone and it was my weekend, and I would just sit there and be like, okay, what do I do? Like, what's
Yeah.
next? I would plan then to go get into some excitement
Yeah.
as opposed to just being comfortable sitting around, because I guess it felt like if the weekend passed and I didn't do anything, it was a waste. I wasted it. I didn't get out. I didn't, see any friends. I just rested. Didn't seem like it was, it was worth it to work another
Right.
5 days just to get those two.
Exactly. And you're like, I mean, it's your time, and so I know for me, especially when I was, deep into the active part of my addiction, I mean, I definitely was a weekend warrior, like I would wait. I mean, I would plan that shit. I'd freaking wait, like my daughter, like if she was at her dad's or something or whatever, and just
Yeah.
go full throttle. I mean, like, like that was it. Friday night, just got paid. My pocket, I'm gonna get laid. Hey.
Well, and it does make sense for people who do share custody with children every second weekend. And then, because
Yeah.
as well, now that you said that, it was true. Every second weekend, it was like, like months in advance. Like I had to, make sure that there
Yeah.
was something when it was my kid-free weekend, and that always included liquor. And I think it probably started too for school too, because you're so happy to get out of school on a Friday and it's the weekend,
Right.
and like you finally get to, go with your friends. And we started drinking, like I think we talked about many times, very early. So that behavior started in junior high.
Yeah.
Of going in, picking up some weed and some vodka, and then sitting there
Friday night.
Friday night drinking all night, and it
Oh,
continued well into my 40s or 30s.
yes. And I mean, and then I mean, it really got to the point where, I mean, like the British had Mondays as their hangover day, but I mean, I got to a point where I wasn't even feeling better until like Wednesday, probably. You know what I mean? Like,
It was a week. Yeah, it does. It takes like 5 days. It's like
yeah,
you're lucky if you're ready for next weekend, but you would still do it
yeah.
anyway again.
And I mean, Friday nights have historically been a huge trigger for me. I mean, especially, when my daughter was out of the house, and I mean, because for so long, like, I mean, she was like my sidekick, and then when she went off to college, I mean, I guess I just, honestly, it was a combination of it being a Friday night, but also boredom and loneliness too, which we'll definitely have to have our own, episodes on those energies too. But they were the catalyst for many nights that, started with, okay, I'm just gonna leave the house, and then next thing I know, I've, been on a run for a couple of days.
Mhm.
So, yeah, just you know, weekends have definitely been a trigger point. And I know that they are for a lot of people that are navigating this spiritual recovery journey. And so, we always want to talk about solutions here on sex, drugs, and spirituality. So, moving into really exploring weekends and spirituality, right? So, how can we navigate these weekend addiction triggers and maintain our commitment, right? Because it's all about committing to yourself, right? To that you are going to have this balanced, fulfilled lifestyle, right? And balance mind, body, spirit. So, one of the first steps that we can begin to take is awareness, 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 awareness. I always say that, I mean, really, in the 12-step programs, the first three steps, I believe, are awareness, acceptance, action, right? So you have to be aware first that, okay, so when is it that, I go fuck up? Oh, okay, I see that it's, always coincides with the weekend or whatever, whatever your own personal triggers are. But by identifying our triggers and, beginning to understand the patterns around that really led to, I guess, unhealthy, I also like to say maladaptive behaviors, right? We can begin to develop some strategies to cope with these triggers, right? And so, for me, one of the most powerful tools is mindfulness, right? And so by staying present and not, and, guys out there, I know, and especially those of you, that are listening that may, be struggling right now, I know that it is really hard to stay in the present moment and not, just react to a trigger, especially when it's coupled with, like, say, Friday nights. So, that's why, like, if you're in the present moment and you're aware of your thoughts and feelings, you can learn to recognize when you're being triggered. So if you know that weekends are a time when you go left field, right? Then, and that, let's say that, your parents are a trigger, you may not want to go by your parents' house on a Friday night and hang out with them.
Mhm.
I mean, just so becoming aware in that way can really help. And so, when you begin to see the patterns, and then you can start, it's really metacognition, right? It's rising above it, seeing the patterns. And so this is all about, instead of just reacting to that trigger, and I hear so many people like, what happened? I was just going up to the store for a jug of milk. Next thing I knew, I'm at the trap house, I mean, or whatever. And so, it's about recognizing, okay, I just got triggered, right? And then instead of reacting on it, just take a moment, just, even 30 seconds to pause, to breathe, to get back in your body. You can even do, some kind of small tapping exercises, right? Whatever, to get back in to your body before reacting impulsively. Okay. And then, and when you got like about that 30-second window that you've gotten back into your present, body, right? Then you can remind yourself, oh, hey, I got goals. I got something to do tomorrow. I got, whatever it is. And,
Mhm.
so presence of mind is huge. It's huge. Mhm.
Perfect. And another important strategy is creating boundaries. And this can be limiting exposure to certain people or environments. And specifically, if this is, like Elizabeth said, these patterns of behaviors, there are numerous environments that I did have to stay away from until I could kind of incorporate that together, because the way addiction is linked to, liquor and then the use, those pathways that we go down, and it's almost just like you're on autopilot. So
Yes.
I think you mentioned something a different time that, like driving a different way home from work, maybe on a Friday, so that you're not heading past, your watering hole that you would normally then stop at, or something like that. But really keeping those boundaries and then holding yourself accountable to that boundary, in my opinion, would be beneficial, because the Friday is like, I did that one that you suggested about driving a different way, and this was, it seemed to help me too. I know this was about stopping to get weed, because I tend to just stop and get a joint on my way home from work all the time, and I was like, what, this time I'm gonna go the other way. And I did. I went to yoga, and then I just went home, and it was fine. There wasn't, I know it's not as big of a trigger, but those are the ones I'm working on right now. But that's what you had said, and it really helped me in that sense. So I thought I'd put that in there.
Yeah. So I think that, definitely doing different things, even if it feels uncomfortable, because, if you're on the recovery journey, then what it's all about is, you're learning how, or we're learning how to shift those, or to grow new neurotransmitters, right? And so, because the patterns have been well grooved for some of us, right? And so you just, but so by shifting it to something else, especially after being able to get back in your body. So, I am a big proponent for anything somatic. So just, just touching or tapping, or sometimes, I'll just kind of like slap my legs or something like that, all that can help you get in, so you don't immediately react. And then, like Jackie said, just making a different choice, just try, even if it feels uncomfortable,
and it probably will at first. And
what?
It probably will at first.
Yes, we do, friends, to make the most of our weekends from a spiritual wellness perspective, right? And so one powerful practice is setting intentions. So by taking, because what we think on the inside is what we're creating, on the outside, right? So as above, so below, as within, so without, right? So by setting intentions, by taking a few moments at the beginning of the weekend, or even, because if y'all are anything like I was, I planned that shit out. You know what I mean? So you might need to start setting intentions like on Wednesday. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It starts building. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, but by taking a few moments at the beginning of your process or whatever, and reflect on what we hope to cultivate and experience, right? So you're putting that out, you're planning it, and, but it's always important to be malleable with your plans, because of course things change, but this can infuse our time with meaning and purpose, and, get us through where we want to go.
And finally, friends, it is important to listen to our own inner wisdom. And whether you choose to do this through prayer or meditation, or just some quiet reflection, or walking on the lawn as you are cutting the grass, the weekends they offer us the opportunity to tune into our inner voice, into our spirit guides. We can receive guidance, we can ask for assistance, clarity, inspiration. Ultimately, navigating weekends and addiction triggers is all about finding balance. And it's beginning to start to recognize that it is okay to just go out and enjoy ourselves and have fun. But it's also important that we know when to prioritize our health and our well-being. And we have to start listening to ourselves and honor what our needs are. And even sometimes it may feel like the world is falling apart or pulling us in all these different directions, but we have to then bring that back in and center that to ourselves. What are our needs? What is, our wants for this weekend? And sometimes those needs are, yes, to go out and have a good time and
Yeah.
enjoy life. And I did that yesterday. Hence, you guys can hear my voice is a little scratchy today. But last weekend, my weekend was about staying home and resting and cleansing my house and cleaning and spring cleaning like I had planned it. And I was really excited for a whole weekend of meditation and rest. And as excited as if I was going to be out partying, back in the day. Like it was now trained because of repetition that
Yes.
now I can be excited about those things. And we did create these maybe dissociated habits a little bit by continuing to act in them, and then they got easier and easier and easier, and so will the new patterns and the new pathways we're creating. So it's just about consistency and keeping up with that and not giving yourself such a hard time.
Exactly. And Jackie, I 100% agree, because you know what? I mean, I believe, I mean, at least I don't know about you guys, but I'm here to enjoy my life and do what I want,
Mm-hmm.
to have fun. And sometimes I want to go out and party. And I mean, and there's a time where I would totally admonish myself for that, and so that energy of like, oh, or whatever, like that shit. And we've talked about this, that keeps you in that fucking hell loop, excuse my language.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's no excuse. But
Oh.
but it's
Does,
just
and it brings your vibration back down again. And really, what we're trying to do is keep ourselves at that consistent level where we're not
yeah,
continuing to be so judgmental and hard on ourselves, because right away
yeah,
it holds us down. Like, we are allowed to have fun,
yes, guys. I
but
mean, just
safely. We
because
should
you're
be
on.
safe and mindful about our fun.
Yes, and and Jackie and I talk about this a lot. I mean, we are on different spiritual recovery paths, but I mean, and Jackie, I don't want to speak for you, but I know that I have tried the total abstinence, and I kind of feel like it's like telling a teenager not to have sex, right? So it's like kind of the same. Like we've talked about this in previous episodes, so it's not so much that we're saying don't, I mean, have fun. It's about finding balance, guys. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
everything in moderation, including moderation. And the only way to achieve, I mean, the only way that I have found to achieve that balance on the exterior, what I see on the exterior, is to do the work on the interior. And that can be very challenging if you don't want to look at your shit. But guess what, guys? I mean, everyone has, everyone has their own internal struggles. And so just looking at them, clearing that stuff out, because it's like that, those internal blocks that are blocking the flow of energy that helps you to live the balanced life, that fulfilled, happy, joyous, and free life that, and I mean, I've actually talked to people that are like, oh, there's no, real true happiness or whatever. And that just makes me so sad that
No.
people, yeah, no, I mean, yeah, go on. I'm kind of babbling a
No,
little bit.
but just like what you said, it is your outer world is a reflection of your inner state. And there is true happiness, because I have found it. It's not
Yes.
every single day, all day. But, I know the difference between what state of a life I was living in that
Yeah.
addiction and what, like, because I know I didn't think that there was a life without addiction. I didn't
Right.
want to believe there could be a life. I didn't understand how I would feel, what I would do. I'd be like, would I be just like waiting around and never do anything? That's where those are thoughts in my head. Those are my thoughts. Like those, I created those thoughts through thinking, through my limited view of what there was out there in the world. And we do that to ourselves, and it gets easier. So just keep doing the inner work, as Elizabeth says, and keep showing up for yourself, keep questioning why you're feeling the way you do, label these things, awareness, everything we said today, so that hopefully your journey continues on the path that you're hoping will go on.
Yes, yes. And we, just love doing these podcasts. And I mean, I just love it. And it's just, it's so, it's important work for my own mind, body, spirit to do this work and to, it's like, I mean, we've talked about this, like these podcasts have really allowed, it's almost like fast tracked my, my spiritual journey. And I do feel, a great, and we're doing this on a Saturday evening, and I love being able to come together with my bestie, on a Saturday night,
Mm.
just talk about finding balance, on the weekend, the
Yeah.
weekend,
Yeah.
so it's really beautiful. So
Oh, I
thanks.
love it. Yeah, and it was really great. So I want to thank you all for joining us today as we discuss the social evolution of weekends, the implications on addiction, and the spiritual approach to finding balance.
And remember, guys, no matter what challenges the weekend may bring, you're not alone. And you have the power to overcome your triggers.
If you have any questions for us to explore on our show or any other questions concerning our podcast, contact us at sexdrugsandspiritualitypodcast@gmail.com.
And if you'd like to contact us about our client offerings, please follow the below link. And be sure to mention that you heard about us on Spotify. And we look forward to connecting with our spiritual community at 11:11 p.m. EST every Saturday on Spotify to explore and integrate the shadow side of our reality.
Love and light, friends.
Love and light, guys.
Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality Podcast. Elizabeth Maria, Unlimited LLC. And Jackie Lyons of Akashic Energy Healing is not responsible nor liable for any advice, course of treatment, diagnosis, or any other information, services, or products that you obtain through this website.